On the 1st of May 1915, as the RMS Lusitania prepared to cast off from Pier 54 in New York, an unsettling development unfolded. As passengers boarded the Grand Cunard liner, a published warning released by the Imperial German Embassy appeared in 50 American newspapers, including those delivered that morning to the ship's own newsstand. Travelers intending to embark on the Atlantic Voyage vessels flying the flag of Great Britain are liable to destruction. The German government had declared the waters around the British Isles a war zone. The consequences of this policy would soon unfold into one of the most infamous maritime tragedies in history. This is the story of the RMS Lusitania. To understand why the Lusitania sank, one must first understand the strategic desperation of 1915. By February of that year, the British Royal Navy had effectively blockaded Germany, strangling its supply lines. Germany was desperate and needed a way to fight back. In retaliation, on February 4th, Germany declared the waters around the British Isles a war zone. Allied ships could be hit at any moment. This was not yet total unrestricted warfare. Efforts were nominally made to avoid neutral ships like those of the United States. Even though this was supposed to be, at least on paper, the rules in reality were fragile. This marked a major escalation in the war. Any ship sailing here, even a civilian passenger liner, could face an attack at any moment. Just weeks before the Lusitania sailed, on March 28th, the German submarine U-28 stopped the British passenger steamer Falaba. Witnesses reported that the submarine gave the ship only 10 minutes to evacuate before torpedoing her, killing one American, Leon Thrasher. It was a grim omen of what was to come. As a result of this, Germany repeatedly warned neutral citizens, particularly Americans, not to travel on British vessels entering the war zone. The Imperial German Embassy even placed warnings in dozens of American newspapers. Despite the warnings, passengers continued to book passage. Many believed Germany would never attack a passenger liner carrying civilians, an optimism bias that will soon meet a grim reality. The RMS Lusitania was the fastest ocean liner of her era. Built in Scotland for the Cunard Line, her specifications were staggering: 787 feet long, powered by 65,000 horsepower steam turbines with a maximum speed of 25 knots, making her one of the fastest ships on the Atlantic. Before this fateful voyage, the Lusitania had completed more than 200 crossings between Liverpool and New York, a record that made her one of the most trusted and celebrated liners of her time. Commanding the Lusitania on this voyage was 58-year-old Captain William Thomas Turner, a veteran of the Cunard Line since 1878. By the time he took command of the Lusitania in 1907, he was already a veteran of over 2 decades of service. Turner was precisely the kind of steady hand Cunard wanted on the bridge of its most famous liner. But nothing in his long and distinguished career had prepared him for what awaited on the waters of the Irish Sea. The final voyage of Lusitania began amid intense diplomatic tension. On May 1, 1915, the RMS Lusitania departed New York Harbor, bound for Liverpool. On board were 1,257 passengers and 702 crew members, a total of 1,959 souls drawn from 18 nations, among them 159 Americans. In the cargo alongside the ordinary cargo were ammunitions. Unbeknownst to the passengers, the Lusitania was not merely a passenger liner. Built with government subsidy, the ship was designed to be converted into an armed merchant cruiser. Below decks, in the cargo hold designated for war materials, it carried a manifest of supplies destined for the British Admiralty. Approximately 4.2 million rounds of Remington .303 rifle cartridges, 1,250 empty shrapnel shell cases, and 3,240 brass percussion fuses. German authorities would later cite this cargo as proof the vessel was a legitimate military target. Lusitania departed New York at noon, following the established procedures that had guided the vessel from this harbor more than 200 times before. At Pier 54, the mooring lines were cast off as tugs eased the great liner from the berth. Crew members secured the gangways, while the ship's whistle signaled the departure to the bustling harbor traffic. Slowly, the vessel moved down the channel, the Manhattan skyline receding as passengers lined the rails to wave farewell. The harbor pilot guided the liner past the Statue of Liberty, and when the pilot boat pulled away mid-afternoon, Lusitania turned the bow toward the open Atlantic. To conserve coal and reduce operating costs in a time of reduced passenger traffic, Captain Turner was sailing with only 19 of his 25 boilers active. This reduced his potential maximum speed from over 25 knots to a maximum of 21 knots. The crossing proceeded uneventfully for the first 5 days. By May 6, as the ship approached the Irish coast, Captain William Thomas Turner took precautions. He posted double lookouts on the bridge and ordered the watertight doors closed. This was after receiving an advisory from the British Admiralty communication advising submarines to be avoided by keeping a mid-channel course and steering a zigzag course. On the morning of May 7th, as the fog cleared off the coast of Ireland, the ship was approximately 11 miles from the Old Head of Kinsale, a prominent headland on the southern coast of Ireland. Until this moment, the voyage had proceeded without any incident. To those on board, the voyage appeared to be nearing its end without incident. Unknown to those on board RMS Lusitania, another presence lurked in the waters below. On April 30th, 1915, 6 days before Lusitania approached the Irish coast, the German submarine U-20 departed Wilhelmshaven under the command of 30-year-old Kapitänleutnant Walther Schwieger. Schwieger was an aggressive commander, described by historians as adopting a shoot-first and ask-questions-later approach. The vessel, a Type U-19 submarine built in Danzig, carried a crew of 31 men and was armed with 6 torpedoes. Schwieger's orders were to target merchant vessels in the waters around the British Isles. On May 5 and 6, U-20 sank 3 ships off the south coast of Ireland: the schooner Earl of Latham, the steamer Candidate, and the Centurion. In each instance, Schwieger allowed crews and passengers to evacuate before sinking the vessels. By the morning of May 7th, U-20 was patrolling approximately 11 miles off the Old Head of Kinsale, the very waters Lusitania was entering. The submarine was low on fuel and had only 3 torpedoes remaining. Schwieger decided to abandon his patrol and begin the return voyage to Germany. At 11 a.m., Schwieger submerged after sighting a fishing boat he mistook for a British patrol vessel. Heavy fog had shrouded the Irish coast for hours, making visibility nearly impossible. By early afternoon at approximately 1 p.m., the fog had lifted. The weather was described as beautifully clear with a calm sea. Turner brought the ship closer to the Irish coast to get a navigational fix. At 1:40 p.m., he altered course to S87 degrees east, setting a direct line toward Liverpool. At 1:50 p.m., he began taking a 4-point bearing to precisely fix his position off the Old Head of Kinsale. This maneuver required him to maintain a steady course, meaning that the earlier advisory by the British Admiralty to maneuver in zigzag pattern was not possible at this time of the voyage. At approximately 1:20 p.m., lookouts aboard the submarine sighted a large steamer on the horizon. Through his periscope at a range of 700 meters, Schwieger identified a 4-funneled passenger liner. At time 2:10 p.m., from a distance of about 700 meters, Schwieger ordered a G6 torpedo to be fired. The torpedo struck the Lusitania on the starboard side, just below the waterline between the 3rd and 4th funnels. The impact was devastating. Almost immediately, a second, much larger explosion tore through the ship. Schwieger himself was surprised. The resulting blast ripped a massive hole in the ship's hull, dooming her instantly. The cause of the second explosion remains the most debated forensic question of the disaster. Survivors described it as a deep, rumbling roar. The official British inquiry, led by Lord Mersey, concluded it was a boiler explosion caused by the inrush of cold water onto hot engines. However, forensic analysis and later dives suggest the explosion was centered near the transverse coal bunker, possibly igniting coal dust, or, critically, the munitions stored nearby. On board RMS Lusitania, the effect was immediate and catastrophic. The ship took a heavy list to starboard 15 degrees within seconds, eventually worsening. Electrical power began to fail. Captain Turner, remaining on the bridge, ordered the helm hard starboard, hoping to beach the ship on the Irish coast, but there was no response as the engines were damaged and rendered dead. Just 18 minutes after the torpedo struck, at 2:28 p.m., the bow of the Lusitania hit the seabed 300 feet below. The stern rose briefly into the air before sliding under. For those in the water, survival now depended on luck and the rescue boats racing from the Irish shore. When the roll was counted, the scale of the horror became clear. Of the 1,959 passengers and crew on board, 1,198 were dead. 763 survived. Among the dead were 128 Americans. The bodies of more than 300 victims were recovered, most buried in 3 mass graves in Queenstown, now Cobh, Ireland. In the weeks following the sinking, a propaganda war erupted. Germany issued a statement claiming the Lusitania was a legitimate military target, citing the munitions manifest. The German artist Karl Goetz minted a medal celebrating the sinking, depicting the Lusitania with guns on her deck and a skeleton selling tickets. The British government seized upon this. They created a replica of the medal, distributing it with a box that read, "An exact replica of the medal which was designed in Germany and distributed to commemorate the sinking of the Lusitania." This indicates the true feeling the warlords endeavor to stimulate. It was a masterful piece of propaganda, and it deliberately omitted the context of the munitions. While most humans, after surviving a tragedy of such magnitude, will consider a change of profession, this was not the case with Captain Turner. He returned to service. In January 1917, while commanding the troopship Ivernia in the Mediterranean, history repeated itself. A torpedo struck. The ship began to sink. And Turner, the same man who had watched the Lusitania disappear beneath him, did not flee. He remained on the bridge until every man had departed. Only then did he leave. He swam as the ship went down under his feet. He survived, again. 2 sinkings, 2 escapes. Most humans would have taken the hint. Turner returned to service again, retired in 1919, and died in 1933 of intestinal cancer. This is a man who looked at death twice and each time told it, "Not yet." Lusitania carried 4.2 million rifle cartridges in her cargo holds. The German government argued she was a legitimate military target. The British government insisted she was a civilian liner. Both sides presented their cases. Both sides defended their actions. Neither side asked the 1,200 who would die whether their lives were worth the cost. So the question is, in the architecture of war, do we ever truly value human life? Or do we only value what we decide human life is worth?